Hi there, friends, and thank you for pressing play on my daily podcast. I've got a great conversation with the always brilliant Bill Boyle. Bill B in DC and I sat down and talked late last night. You can watch it on YouTube or Substack. Go subscribe at Stand Up with Pete. But my conversation with Bill starts on today's show at about 37 minutes. But as I do every day, I've got your headlines and your clips. Just a heads up, this week I won't have that every day. I'll have it today and tomorrow, but Wednesday through Sunday, I will be in Europe. That's right. Tuesday night, my daughter Julia and I are flying to Amsterdam because she has been accepted as a student to attend this University of Amsterdam in September of this year. She is likely to attend there. She's waiting on one other school. It has been quite an experience for Julia applying to colleges, much different than our older daughter Ava and Julia. Ava was an honor student, an excellent student, but academia wasn't really her pursuit necessarily, and Julia was this top student in high school and, crafted this entire career. She was the vice president of her class and got excellent grades, top of the class, grade-wise and honor classes, but was also involved in several other organizations, climate organization, an organization called World of Difference, which is like a human rights organization, and more. So we couldn't be prouder of how much she's been participated in, how much of a leader that she is, how hilarious and smart and thoughtful that Julia is. And this week, I'll be traveling with her to Amsterdam and then potentially France, because she might still hear from a school in France and get accepted there. So we'll know this week where she's decided to pursue her education, and we're just so excited and grateful and proud. Thank you so much for your support, me and my family. Over these years, many of you have been with us since Julie was born, as a matter of fact, 18 years ago. And I hope that we can stay friends forever. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm real excited to take this trip with her. I've only been to Amsterdam once before, and it was 26 years ago, so I don't think I'm going to be recreating that trip, that's for sure. But Julie and I will explore the city. If you know anybody there, if you've got any advice, you've been to Amsterdam, let me know. I'll read your emails on the plane. StandUpWithPete@gmail.com. Apparently, the hardest part about being a student in Amsterdam is finding housing. There's no place to live, so that's going to be our biggest challenge. If you've got an apartment in Amsterdam that you want to rent us, let me know. All right. So I've got your headlines. I've got your clips. It was quite a weekend. Obviously, I hope that you went to a No Kings protest. If you get out there, I hope you had a great experience. I was the MC, the host of mine here in Nyack, New York. It went really well. We had, 700 people or so. It was a wonderful day. It was sunny, cold and windy, but it was great to be outside with so many amazing friends and neighbors of mine. I hope you had a similar experience. Talk more about that. Got some clips and some other news to read about it. The other big story over the weekend is where I'll start. However, it's the war. The United States and Israel started bombing Iran just about a month ago, and there is so much to say, so many developments over the weekend, of course, and it happens all day, and it's hard to follow, but I try to recap it as much as I can for you here on the show every morning, every day of the week. So thank you very much for your support. Cannot do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic, or you can get a paid subscription at Substack. Either way, I really appreciate you supporting my work with a paid subscription. And many of you paid subscribers will be joining us in Las Vegas in about 9 days. Podjam 3 tickets are available. We are going to have a great couple of days together in Las Vegas. I know it's Las Vegas, but still, it'll be a great time with great friends and great people. Wajid Ali is set to join us. JL Kovan is going to be there, and Rod and Karen from the Black Guy Who Tips podcast will also be broadcasting. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, let's get to the war report. Over the weekend, our commander-in-chief, our Ayatollah, said he might just take the oil in Iran and possibly seize its major fuel hub, Karg Island, which we're all learning all about. And overnight, he also said that the U.S. hit many long sought-after targets in Iran on Sunday, while Israel says it's carrying out new attacks in Tehran and Lebanon, of course. Stupid Trump's comments came as U.S. officials are saying troops are preparing for possible ground operations, but Schittler added that a peace deal could be reached fairly quickly. Don't think it's going to happen. For their part, the parliament speaker in Iran said forces were, quote, waiting for American ground troops so that they could, quote, rain fire upon them. And meanwhile, the price of oil rises to more than $115 a barrel. There's another warning that food prices will rise as fertilizer gets harder to export as well. Multiple outlets now reporting that a $270 million E-3 Sentry spy plane was demolished by an Iranian attack at a Saudi airbase, and 15 Americans were injured. An American E-3 Sentry was destroyed during Iran's attack in the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, according to U.S. officials and new photos. You can see these photos of it. And apparently the destruction of the $270 million aircraft is a significant blow to our ability to get real-time picture of battle and assess incoming attacks in the Middle East, according to experts talking to the Wall Street Journal, who said it's a huge deal. Hurts the U.S.'s ability to see what's happening in the Gulf and maintain situational awareness. Apparently, the Air Force only has 16 of these aircraft in circulation prior to Friday's attack, 6 of which were stationed at that airbase. 12 U.S. service members were also reportedly injured after an Iranian missile and multiple drones hit the airbase. At least 2 of the wounded were considered to be seriously wounded. Multiple U.S. refueling aircraft were also damaged in the attack. The American airbase has been repeatedly targeted by Iran's retaliatory attacks in the Gulf, a previous assault damaging 5 refueling aircraft earlier this month, where about 303 U.S. service members were wounded and at least 13 were killed, according to CENTCOM. So that airbase is a main target for the Iranians, and they've been very successful, I think you could say. 50,000 American troops now in the Mideast. I go into detail with Bill Boyle about just that. And that wraps up all of the war report that I've got for you. It develops hour to hour. I have all kinds of news alerts and sites that I'm following across the world, international sites, and try to gather it, aggregate it for you, and read it here for you for your listening pleasure and information every morning. Send me your sources, what you're seeing, what you're reading, important articles, analysis, clips, and I will try to include them in the show. I can always use your help. It's a one-person show. Shout out, though, to my friend Ryan, who I finally met over the weekend. He's active duty military. He's a big muckety-muck commander now of a vessel in the Navy. That's all I'll tell you. But I have been corresponding with Ryan for several years now, and Ryan's been listening to the show when it was on POTUS back in 2010 on SiriusXM. So 16 years, I guess you could say, followed me here to the podcast when that was finished and has been supporting me ever since. And I was really excited to finally meet Ryan over the weekend, and we had an awesome conversation. He mentioned to me how impressed he is with the quality of the podcast, given it's just me. And I want to mention that just as a reminder. He said what I often used to say is, you listen to so many of these other corporate podcasts like the New York Times and others, and they have like 10 names that they say every day who produce the show. And here it's just me. So thank you for mentioning that and giving me that perspective, Ryan. It means a lot. And more importantly, thanks for meeting up with me. It was great to get to know you, and it made me think a lot about people who are, Ryan, like I said, is active duty military, and I learned a lot about Ryan and his wife. He's got 4 daughters, and it just started thinking that when he goes out to sea, or when anybody in the military deploys, you need to think about their spouse, who is back home, often taking care of the child or children in Ryan and his wife's case. And it's such a sacrifice to be home. I mean, I remember when Val would leave, rarely would she leave, but me with just the kids, but for a couple of days, I had to do everything and my work. It was so hard for a couple of days. And so to be alone with your family, holding down the house, probably a part or full-time job, and the kids and all their responsibilities because your spouse got sent out to war by any president, it's always a sacrifice, but it's that much more frustrating, in my opinion, for this one, because this is a war of choice, unnecessary and horrible. And so it just made me think about the families when talking to Ryan, one of many things. But it really was fun. It's always great to meet folks, and I'm always happy to do it and get to know you and your family and your life the way that I've shared so much of mine with you. Looking so forward to meeting more of you in the coming years. All right, now on to a kind of a recap of the No Kings protests, marches, movements over the weekend. Organizers not verified by independent analysts put the total at 8 million people topping the 7 million estimated at the previous No Kings Day in October. This time there were more events scheduled, 3,300 versus 2,700, and larger crowds. The only larger single-day protest ever in the United States was the first Earth Day, which is all the way back in 1970. I was interested to learn. An estimated 20 million people participated in environmental rallies and teach-ins. Consider this, says USA Today, in a nation with a population approaching 349 million, the participation of 8 million people means that more than 1 of every 50 U.S. residents joined a No Kings rally. Organizers said 2/3 of participants who signed up live in suburban, small town, or rural areas. That's a 40% increase over the last time in protesters from outside big cities. Thousands of demonstrations against the regime unfolding across the country Saturday, the third round in the nation's series of loosely coordinated, quote, No Kings rallies. USA Today says the day of protest, the first since October, came as the midterm election season takes shape and as Democrats work to capitalize politically on the unpopular war with Iran. Exactly a month earlier, President Trump ordered the first U.S. strikes against Iran, setting off a conflict that has sent gasoline prices soaring and rattled Republicans. The war was a central animating force in the Saturday rallies, which were attended by roughly 8 million people, according to the organizers. Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it. That's just a little bit of the statistics. All different media outlets, NPR, CNN, and others have the kind of takeaways from the No Kings, which I think are interesting to read. And yet I don't need them to know what my takeaway was, which was an awesome experience, a communal experience. I was energized. I was inspired and happy to see so many people across the country so engaged. I've been trying to fight apathy my whole career here hosting this program. So I always love to see when it seems like it's working, that we're doing a good job, that people are engaged and caring about the important issues that matter to you, to your family, to your community, to your country, to your planet, which is what I cover here on Stand Up, talking to the best experts we can find. Let's see. Other stories in the news besides the war and No Kings? Well, sure. I thought this was interesting. Israeli police stopped the Catholic bishop of the Holy Land from entering the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Am I saying that right? On Palm Sunday to celebrate Mass. Services have been canceled due to the Iran war, but there was hope to broadcast a service or at least pray inside the sacred space. But that is a pretty big controversy. Also, the Pope has rejected claims that God justifies war and prayed especially for Christians in the Middle East during Palm Sunday Mass before tens of thousands of people in St. Peter's Square. I'll get into that with my Catholic guest, Bill Boyle, coming up. 3 major reports out this month, according to NPR, say that our majesty, Donald Trump, has done serious damage to American democracy at remarkable speed since his return to the White House, which he also demolished. He's demolished the White House. He just keeps tearing new things up, and you can't keep up with what he's done. It's really sad. An annual report, though, from an institute at Sweden's University of Gothenburg concluded democracy had deteriorated so much in the U.S. that it lowered the country's democracy ranking from 20th to 51st out of 179 countries. The U.S. now has landed between Slovakia and Greece. We did it. Oh, my God. Meanwhile, another organization, Bright Line Watch, which surveys more than 500 U.S. scholars, concluded that the U.S. system now falls nearly midway between liberal democracy and dictatorship. The newest survey comes out next week, and yet another report out Thursday from a third organization, Freedom House. The first one, I don't know if I mentioned it, the Institute of Sweden's University of Gothenburg. It's called the VDEM. So VDEM, Bright Line Watch, and Freedom House says that among free countries, the U.S. joined Bulgaria and Italy in registering the largest declines in political rights and civil liberties last year alone. NPR aggregated all these reports. You can read it there. And another study, I want to mention this on a separate issue, but a 2023 study, I think I read this in the New York Times, about how much these immigration tactics are affecting farmers, specifically dairy farmers. 2023 study by the University of Wisconsin found that more than 10,000 undocumented immigrants perform roughly 70% of the labor on Wisconsin's dairy farms. Dairy farms that employ immigrant workers produce 79% of the nation's milk supply, and the price of milk will double without them, according to the New York Times article here, which I thought was really important and interesting and worth mentioning as well. And finally, a shipment of 12 tons of Kit Kat products was stolen while being transported from a factory in central Italy to Poland. The parent company of Kit Kat, Nestle, confirmed the theft of 413,000 Kit Kat bars from a new Formula One themed line. Nestle stated consumer safety is not at risk and the supply of Kit Kats will not be affected. Don't worry. Why would anyone steal a Kit Kat? Gross. Weirdest candy to steal. I am sorry. The hell's somebody going to do with 12 tons of Kit Kat bars? All right, those are your headlines. Now on to the sound bites I've gathered for you from the weekend. Let's start with my appearance yesterday on the Today Show in Australia. I did 4 minutes with my good friend David Campbell and his co-host Sylvia talking about and recapping No Kings. So I thought this was fun to do. Obviously, always fun. You can watch it on all my social medias, but I thought it would be a good place to start here.
Welcome back. Making news this morning. Millions of Americans have lined the streets over the weekend protesting President Donald Trump as part of the No Kings Day rallies. Bruce Springsteen even taking to the stage in St. Paul, Minnesota to perform his anti-ICE protest song, Streets of Minneapolis.
Here at home, they killed and roamed in the winter of 26. Who remember the names of those who died on the streets of Minneapolis.
Political commentator and comedian Pete Dominic joins us now from New York. Pete, you were there too. Over 3,000 protests nationwide. You were the MC of one of them. So tell us what it was like. How was the feeling out there?
It was amazing. David, Sylvia, thanks for having me. Thanks for covering this. It was historic. It was the biggest protest in the history of America, like 3,000 different events. I was at one in the small town I live in just north of New York City. It was amazing to be out there and to be connected with people and to be reminded that they tried to silence us. They failed. They tried to divide us, but we came together. What gives us hope is that there are so many more of us than there are of them. And I think that our Ayatollah did something he didn't expect. He united us. Our commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, united millions of Americans across the country who are determined and defiant. And so it was an amazing feeling, and we feel good.
These protests didn't just play out in places like New York. They were also in places that were once completely Republican areas, like West Virginia and down the road from Mar-a-Lago. Why are some of his supporters turning on him? What are the key factors driving that change in sentiment?
Well, America, sadly, we don't really take a lot of accountability when we do something wrong, when our leaders do something wrong, when our institutions fail us. But when there's a cost, a direct cost to Americans, people start to wake up, even the most apathetic who aren't paying attention to politics. And I think two things that have been major developments over the past couple of months is these Epstein files. And if you didn't know what they were and you just tuned in, it would look like our president is covering something up, maybe because he's involved. And then he started a war that affected every American. Our gas prices went up practically overnight, and everybody woke up, and including in the strongholds, the places that, used to be hugely in favor of him. Everybody's waking up, and they're directly affected. That matters. It matters to Americans.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, that's something we're about to talk about, the price of oil down here too, and how it's affected the world, and us indeed as well. The president, in the meantime, is talking about Sharpies in the Oval Office. He's planning on what he's going to do, maybe playing golf this weekend. Do you think he hears any of this? Do you think his advisors hear any of this? Will he take this or even the polling on board?
No, he doesn't hear anything except his own voice. He has no moral conscience. He cares about nothing but himself. And if you haven't realized that yet, you haven't been paying attention. Everybody around him knows that. His family knows that. Eric definitely knows that. And so he doesn't care. And he lives in this echo chamber where he only surrounds himself with people who are sycophants, who love him, who are bootlickers, as we call them in America. So he's not going to change anything. He doesn't want to go anywhere. But our silence is what they feed off. They want us to look around the chaos and say it's all too much. They want us to think nothing matters and to believe that voting is pointless and won't make a difference. But Americans know now, if they're waking up to the fact that democracy ain't a spectator sport. It's a participatory one. Democracy is not something that you have. It's something that you do and something that you build and rebuild and build it again. And unfortunately, Campbell, Sylvia, it feels kind of worrisome, but we're the ones we've been waiting for. It was amazing to see so many young people out there as well yesterday.
A lot of people raising their voices over the weekend. It'll be very interesting to see how it's all reflected in the midterms come November as well. But of course, we've got many months to get through before then. Pete, always great to chat. Thanks for your time today.
Every day is a year here.
We get it.
Yeah, we feel you.
We're feeling a lot of that pain at the moment. Rising fuel costs.
All right, there you go. That's how it went yesterday. And I got a little soapboxy there, didn't I? I just wanted the Australian audience to know that there are so many of us that think the way that I was trying to articulate there. I've been so inspired by so many others, and I aggregated all those voices and tried to unleash them in like a 30-second soundbite on Australia's Today Show. So not bad. Let's get to much better speeches at No Kings. First, let's head to the primary flagship protest, of course, was in Minneapolis, where we already heard Bruce Springsteen in that clip. Here's the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz.
Are warm. Our weather may be a little cool, but our people are warm and we're fierce. And my message, because this is not over, don't ever mistake our kindness for weakness. We demand justice for Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We demand justice for every single person who was hurt or traumatized. We will never forget what they did here. And I have a message to our immigrant community here in Minnesota. You are seen, heard, valued, and loved.
Good stuff from a beloved leader. If you live in Minnesota, that is a really good guy, Tim Walz. Also at that same rally was Jane Fonda, who had this message from Renee Good's family to share.
Becca Good, the wife of Renee Good, has asked me to read a statement, which I am honored to do. Hello, Minnesota. This is from Becca Good. I am so proud to call Minneapolis my home. I can't stop talking about how absolutely beautiful it is to see how Minnesota shows up for its people. I want to say thank you for how you've shown up for me, how you've shown up and shown out for all the people victimized by this horrible moment in history. So many people have reached out to me and surrounded me with safety and care. And I know I am not alone in feeling in awe of your generosity. Neighbors are paying people's rent and groceries. Hundreds of businesses become community hubs. This is beautiful. And beyond Minnesota, people all over the country and the world care about what happens here to all of us.
All right, well done by the legend, the icon, who is never going to stop being an activist. I'm inspired by her a great deal, Jane Fonda. All right, now let's go to another actor turned activist. It's De Niro with a statement on Saturday at No Kings.
I support this movement 150%. Yeah. It's time to say no to kings. It's time to say no to Donald Trump. We've had enough. No King Trump. No unnecessary wars that rob our resources, sacrifice our brave servicemen and women, and slaughter innocents. No corrupt leader enriching himself and the Epstein-class buddies. No taking away health care from our most vulnerable neighbors. No unaffordable groceries. No unaffordable energy. No unaffordable housing. And no inflation at its highest level since COVID. No government masked thugs shooting down our neighbors in the streets. Trump has to be stopped.
All right. Yeah, Bob. Yeah. Good stuff, I think. And now I don't know where this woman was. I think it's New York. But this older white lady gets approached. This clip went viral. You've probably already seen it by now. She gets approached by this like right-wing YouTuber provocateur, right? They're from all across the spectrum. There's left-wing ones that they go to the rallies and they try to get people to try to. I'm not even passing judgment on the tactic at this point. We're through the barrel on it, but everybody is talking about this clip because this older white woman just absolutely handled it perfectly, eloquently. And I saw a lot of black folks cheering this on, which is where I found it last night.
There's a lack of diversity here today. That it's mostly people who look like you and I. And I just
It is not for black people, for people of color to be to get out on the street. They're at risk when they do that. If anybody's going to get arrested here, it's going to be a black person. It is not safe for them, and they don't need to participate. We need to walk in their name.
Gotcha. Okay.
I love her.
Well, okay. What do you think about voter ID? Do you think it's racist?
It's 100% a tactic to control the population and prevent people from voting, so that the only votes so that the gerrymandering can work, so that white voters can vote in white Christian males.
Have you been voting blue most of your life?
I voted blue in the womb.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
If you had to vote for a Republican, J.D. Vance or Rubio, which one would you pick if you had to?
Yeah. I would slit my throat.
Wow!
Yeah. Really?
I love her.
Oh, my God. That is so good. That was very good. I hope you've seen that one. All right. That concludes the clips related to No Kings I've got for you. Let's head to the war in Iran and responses to that. First, here is the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, who's been very outspoken against the U.S.-Israeli invasion of Iran. And he's undeniably sexy in the face and voice.
This war in Iran is a big mistake for the world and therefore for the U.S.
You've been quite blunt in your criticism of the U.S. and Israeli war with Iran. Why have you chosen to be so outspoken on this issue?
Well, as I said, there's a moral dimension of this war, or these wars, I would say, because I think all of them are interconnected. The Gaza war, of course, what is happening in Lebanon, and of course in Iran. I do believe that there is a clear strategy from Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government to create a new geopolitical reality in the Middle East. I don't know if the U.S. administration is aligned with that vision or not. We are very concerned about the situation in the Middle East because at the end of the day, we suffer the instability. We suffer, of course, the insecurity and the economic impact of all these wars. And that is why we are so engaged and we are so vocal, stating that we need to return to diplomacy.
There you go. Pedro Sanchez. Good stuff. Sorry I objectified him earlier. I feel bad about that now. Prime Minister of Spain. Go look into him and listen to him. Don't listen to this guy except every once in a while when I drop a clip in here. It's the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who's looking more and more nervous these days. His political future doesn't look bright, and this war is going to be on his hands, of course. He was outside his airplane, so the sound's not great, but I thought it was worth listening.
We're talking about this. There are some in the Iranian regime that are going around saying that they want to make the Strait of Hormuz tolling thing, they want to make it permanent. That's unacceptable. The whole world should be outraged by it. We're impacted by it a little bit, but the rest of the world is impacted by it a lot more, including many of the countries represented today here at the G7. And so if those countries are deeply impacted by it, all we've said is, you guys need to do something about it. We'll help you, but you guys are going to need to be ready to do something about it. Because when this conflict and when this operation ends, if the Iranians decide, well, now we control the Straits of Hormuz, and you can only go through here if you pay us, and if we allow you to, that's not only is it illegal under international law and maritime law, it's unacceptable. And that can't be allowed to exist. And so what we've said is that the countries that are most impacted by that should be willing to do something about it, and we'll help them.
He sounds like such an unbelievable asshole, because that's what he is. But in that clip specifically, as a result of, it's just like, we went in there and messed up someone's entire house, and then we're angry that they're reacting and that the rest of the world isn't helping us clean it up. It's wild. He's got to know. He's got to feel that, how he's sounding, citing international law. Like, that's something that we ever abide by? All right, well, how's this affecting economics? Everybody loves Justin Wolfers, the Australian economist that you see on cable news and Substack.
I'm optimistic that we're not going to see the worst of it. We're not going to see airlines going bust as a result of this. If an airline hasn't made plans for how could we survive if oil hits $100 a barrel, then management is so incompetent that they don't really deserve to be there. What's really going to happen is oil prices go up, the price of jet fuel's going up, and You've got the extra price that you're forcing people to pay. They now have to arrive at the airport 1, 2, 3 hours earlier. All of that makes airfares more expensive, and it's going to lead to less flying. So what you might see is a few less flights being scheduled. That will hit the profitability of the airlines. It could ultimately hit the employment of airlines. But I think we see everything survive.
All right. He was talking about just the airlines there. All right. Let's move on to Senate candidate, Democrat from Texas. It's James Tallarico. He was on MSNBC with Jen Psaki, I think.
There's another war in the Middle East. There's a cost of living crisis crushing the middle class. There's a secret pedophile ring and no one has been prosecuted. So the people responsible are trying to distract us with the same old culture wars. Trump's own press secretary said they're not ruling out a military draft for their new war in Iran. What do we think the American people care more about? Culture wars or actual wars? What do we think they care more about? Pronouns or prices? This is what the people in power always do. They divide us by party, by race, by gender, by religion, by culture. So we don't notice that they are picking our pockets, that they're closing our schools, gutting our health care, raising taxes on all of us while they cut taxes for themselves. It's literally the oldest strategy in the world. And they are afraid of this movement we're building in Texas. Working people uniting across all those manufactured divisions to take on this broken, corrupt political system.
All right. Tallarico knocking it out of the park as usual. And a lot of college basketball over the weekend. I watched. Did you watch? It was very exciting. Some of it was pretty boring that I saw. But I always loved Charles Barkley. He's very outspoken. I've not always agreed with him over the years. But he was celebrating a college basketball player who is the hero of the game, I guess, who's also an immigrant, his family of immigrants. And so he highlighted him and added this. And you don't see this very often on sports shows talking about immigration, so I liked it, and hopefully the audience does too.
I love that kid and his family. But the way some of these other immigrants are getting treated in our country right now is a travesty and a disgrace. I think there is a difference between amazing immigrants and criminal immigrants. And I think what's going on in our country, what we're doing to some of these amazing immigrants is really unfortunate and it's really sad. And that's a great immigrant story. We have a lot of great immigrant stories out there who their stories need to be told, but some of the stuff that's happening to immigrants in our country right now is really unfortunate and it's really unfair. But immigrants built this country. And we should admire them and respect them.
Chuck, I love you, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And so hopefully you did as well. Finally, I thought this was very funny. From start to finish, it's J.L. Covan, his impression of Trump that he shared. This one is about No Kings. Trump's reaction to No Kings. I think it's really funny from start to finish. So I wanted to end today's clip show with our friend J.L. Covan, promote him and all of his work, his podcast, his Cameo, his social media. Please go follow and like everything that he's doing everywhere, and excited to see his Trump in Las Vegas. But here's a little preview.
So today was really a disgraceful day in the history of our country. I think it was not even hundreds of people. I think we're looking into whether it was Photoshop or CGI or AI. They say AI is the new thing. We're looking into AI very strongly. But for the so-called No Kings protests, I don't know anybody who went to one of these things. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, these things were empty. There was nobody at these protests. And we have a president in this country, and the radical left, even though I won 3 elections very strongly, and they stole one, and now because I am the greatest president we've ever had, and that I am sort of the president of Venezuela, maybe possibly becoming the Shaka Khan, I think is what they call it when you're the leader of Iran. You know, before they had the ayahuascas, which were these radical nuts. They had a Shaka Khan, which we backed very strongly. We love. Everybody says the Shaka Khan of Iran was a great friend to America. So I'm right now the Shazam of Iran, which sort of rhymes, which we like that. I'm the president of Venezuela. I'm looking to soon become the dictator of Cuba. I am the master of Mar-a-Lago and the greatest president in the history of the United States of our country. You know our country. The U.S. country of America States is the place that I was elected 3 times, okay? And everybody knows Roosevelt was elected 4 times, but they felt bad for him because he was in a wheelchair, so he sort of got like a handicap DEI boost. Pete Hegseth would have if Pete Hegseth, our administrative assistant of war, because secretaries are feminine, if he had been around with FDR, he would have rolled him right into the ocean off an aircraft carrier. He would have said, no non-walking president is going to tell me what to do. So people voted him probably on wokeness. I would have won, if I was in a wheelchair, I would have won 9 elections, okay? It would have been not even close. But no kings. I'm an emperor, not a king. So the left is stupid.
The left is stupid. All right. Good stuff. Love that from JL and can't wait to see him in Vegas. I'm sure I'll talk with him here on the podcast between now and then. And I hope you're following and supporting him on all the social media sites and listening to his podcast. And now let's get to today's guest, my conversation with Bill B in D.C., Bill Boyle. He's simply a parking lot garage owner in municipal Washington, D.C. He's a simple former caller of my radio show turned special guest. And he's become very valuable as we have started another war because he pays such close attention talking to all kinds of people, military, commerce, business, and trade right there in the nation's capital. And he's a smart student of history, a curious guy, a Catholic Irish boy who grew up in New Jersey. And I'm always happy to catch up with him. Go follow him on Blue Sky and let him know that you heard him there. Here's my latest with our friend Bill B in D.C. Okay. Bill Boyle's joining me, as I've asked him to do almost every Sunday for about a month, to kind of look back at the week and forecast what might happen this week, especially as we're referring to what's happening in this war that has rippled out throughout the Middle East and the world, really, if you want to talk about how it's affected economies and energy prices. Bill Boyle's a real smart cat. Follow him on Blue Sky if you're not already. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Lots to ask you. Want to get right to it. Your reaction to the No Kings events. Did you attend D.C.?
I did. I posted a few pictures of it. I went to not Francis Scott Key Bridge, Frederick Douglass Bridge in D.C., which is just south of the baseball stadium, and followed the crowd over that. And then into D.C. itself. That crowd, we didn't follow them, but they went over to Fort McNair, which is the military base inside D.C. where Pam Bondi and Steve Miller and all these people now live, so that they can hide from Americans and not live in like regular houses out in the world. And we didn't go over there. We went and drove through the mall, downtown D.C.'s mall, which is the big grassy place, not where you go to buy blue jeans. And we saw tons and tons and tons and tons of No Kings protesters. It was a blustery, sunny day in D.C., and I don't think you could have asked for better as far as how many people were out. I would easily say in the tens of thousands.
What does it all mean? What's it for? What impact does it have?
So, somebody pointed this out. I was reading this yesterday, that the Tea Party protests that the media treated like a world-shaking event, they averaged 300,000 people nationally. In the U.S. yesterday, there were over 9, maybe 10 million people protesting. And all over the country, like everywhere. Franklin, Tennessee, which is like not exactly like liberal blue state country, had like 1,500 people out. Like, this is what it's showing, is that the average middle class person who's gone to college or has, is in a union or just knows what the Constitution says is as pissed off as they have ever been about a president and a government ever. And I think it's a really people are going to look back, historians are going to look back and go like, yeah, this was just the building of the ripples that are going to turn into a gigantic blue wave in November.
It's impossible to ignore, and yet it doesn't seem to have that much of an effect on decisions being made right now by the commander-in-chief. The madman in charge doesn't seem to be affected by public opinion. I guess maybe he's not running again. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe it's an echo chamber of his own brain. I'm not going to try to psychoanalyze him so much, but this is different. I mean, usually when public opinion sways against a politician at any level, they're going to listen to it and they're going to change. The only thing we see him doing is just keep baiting us to somehow and the markets think that this war is going to wrap up any day now. But it seems increasingly that markets, other countries, negotiations aren't happening necessarily, and it's all a bluff because he's got a lot of troops on the ground and sending more. So what could change, if anything, the madman's actions on this war or anything else, if not no kings?
Well, I mean, we're not doing these protests to expect that Trump himself is going to change his behavior. He is clearly a narcissistic sociopath who is also demented in the sense of, I think he's beginning to suffer from dementia. He's also in a social media bubble where he doesn't really understand what's going on in the world in general. And I think that he's lost touch with reality to a great degree. And so, you don't do these protests to affect his day-to-day judgment because as you pointed out, he's nuts and he's disconnected. And remember, the way this would normally work is that Congress would be terrified of all losing their jobs. His own party in the normal world would be terrified of losing their jobs, but they're more terrified of being primaried by his supporters. So unique in American history, we have the situation where the president can really punish his own party that's in charge in Congress. Normally a Congress would say, this is absolutely fucking nuts. We're not doing this. And they would use Congress has preponderant power in the American system. And normally Congress would want to keep their jobs and they would stop what's happening now. That system is sort of broken for the moment, politically, not constitutionally. And we're doing these protests because what has turned out to happen is the protests have started driving public opinion. The protests in Minnesota really drove public opinion. And what the protests show is that, Trump sort of tried to gallop his way into a dictatorship, just kind of do it so fast, right, do it so blatantly that people wouldn't have a chance to react. And an important thing about dictatorships, you need a lot of people to stay on the sidelines. You need a lot of people to acquiesce. It's acquiescence is much more dangerous to a democracy than violent attacks.
They count on silence. They count on
care. You don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. And so what the No Kings protests are doing is by being so spread out and people seeing them everywhere they're going in America, it's making it clear how widespread the opposition is. It is empowering people to go vote. It's empowering people to tell their friends how much this is a disastrous situation we're in. So long run, yes, it's super important. It's just not, that attitude that this is not your attitude, but you and I have heard this a lot, where people are sort of like, well, what can we do to fix this? Because they're treating it like this was like a one guy problem. We fix this one guy and we fix the problem. Right. This is not. This is a systemic crisis. And a systemic crisis needs there to be a movement. You don't beat a movement by day-to-day manipulation of the political system. You beat a movement by a counter movement. And No Kings is a counter movement and a very good one. And that's why it's important.
Let's talk about what's going on right now in the Middle East. I'm just going to read from the New York Times where they're describing kind of troop force. They say several hundred U.S. special operation forces have arrived in the Middle East, joining thousands of Marines and Army paratroopers in a deployment meant to give Trump additional options to expand the month-long war with Iran. The commandos, including Army Rangers and Navy SEALs, have not yet been assigned specific missions, but as specialized ground troops, they could be deployed to help safeguard the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has effectively closed, or they could be deployed as part of a mission to try to seize Karg Island, which is Iran's oil hub in the northern Persian Gulf. Alternatively, they could be used in a mission aimed at Iran's highly enriched uranium at the Isfahan nuclear site. The commandos joined 2,500 Marines and another 2,500 sailors who recently arrived in the region. Altogether, there are more than 50,000 American troops in the Middle East now, roughly 10,000 more than usual, as Trump decides on his next step in the war. Still unclear what the Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit will be charged with. U.S. officials say the president's weighing how to try to open the strait. So we could talk about who's usually there, how many more are there. The number of troops no longer includes the 4,500 aboard the aircraft carrier Gerald Ford, which has been hobbled, had a fire. The Pentagon ordered about 2,000 soldiers from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East. So they lay out the different potential missions or agendas that they could have there. They don't lay out. One thing I want to ask you is what could happen to those guys. I mean, this could be a slaughter like none we've seen even in Iraq.
Right. I mean, as a ex-allied military guy said to me this weekend, the Karg Island operation is like a voluntary hostage situation. Right. So,
because if you go and take it, you have to hold it.
Well, so here's opening the Strait of Hormuz here. Here's the Persian Gulf, Kuwait. Karg Island is all the way up here, right next to the Iranian coast. If you put troops into Karg Island, you have to supply them through the Strait of Hormuz and up the Persian Gulf, which means you're putting your troops right next to Iran in a place that's hard to defend, that's within easy reach of their drones. And what are they doing there? Their goal would be to hold onto Iran's refining capacity. But Iran already just got $27 billion from the U.S. allowing them to do oil sales. They've got, we mentioned the last time we spoke, they've got another refining exit point on the Gulf of Oman. Iran can live without Karg Island for a while, particularly if, when you're Iran and you look to the future, if you end up controlling the strait and can charge $2 billion a pop for tankers to go through the strait, then you're going to make like billions and billions and billions of dollars every year anyway, without your refining. So strategically, all Iran has to do is hold on until the U.S. gives up and allows, and they are in a position where they can control the Strait of Hormuz and charge tolls on it. So we have all these American troops showing up, 50,000 of which, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 are actual combat troops, who, by the way, this is 5 years after the last major campaign we did with ground troops, which means that most of the lower enlisted men have not been in combat before.
Right. I read an article yesterday that the 20 or so Special Forces members that were part of the snatch and grab kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela all got their combat badges because they'd all never been in combat, meaning the, quote, global war on terror veterans have aged out of Special Forces. So the guys that are there now are pretty green.
That's right. And that's especially true of sort of more regular infantry, right? Special Forces guys age out more slowly. You're going to have an army full of 19-year-olds who have never been in combat before, a lot of them, and they're going to be put in a type of combat that the U.S. military has never experienced. They're going to be on a small 8 square mile island. That's it. And the Iranians have thousands of Shaheds, and they've got other drones, and they'll have Russian satellite photos of everything. And they will pound the shit out of these guys with drones. And frankly, American readiness for this is practically nil. So it's where we are now. We're in a strategic cul-de-sac where the U.S., Rubio admitted it the other day, that we're now in a situation where we don't really know what to do to stop the Iranians from controlling the Strait of Hormuz, because we lost all of our deterrent power by destroying anything that we could have held over the Iranians' heads as a deterrent. So for the Iranians, they literally just have to be able to hit the Gulf just enough to make sure that the insurance companies won't insure tankers going through. And then they set up an alternative system, basically a toll booth, and say, go through the northern edge of it. You pay us $2 million, your ship gets through. And Iran then controls the Straits of Hormuz. Rubio's admitted that's the deal. And we don't have any real easy way to get out of that. And the Trump people seem to be thinking, okay, our way out of that is to escalate even more. Except their way of escalation is to be putting American troops in harm's way for a strategic purpose that might be null and void before it even starts.
Well, let's talk about, we can talk about strategic purposes and also just where we were before this war began and where we are now or could be at the end, because while there's no doubt that the U.S. and Israel have decimated the high-ranking members of the military across the command, assassinated the supreme leader, of course, killed him, and have definitely done tremendous damage to military targets, missiles, missile production sites, etc. Maybe they buried this uranium under a mountain. Who knows? Yep. But there's ways of looking at it that objectively you could say right now that it's possible that this action makes Iran stronger in some ways and more able to rebuild. For example, Bloomberg reporting that U.S. government officials' Wall Street analysis starting to consider the prospect that oil prices might surge to an unprecedented $200 a barrel, which empowers Iran and Russia. So how would you frame it right now in terms of what this action, this stepping on our own dick war that we've caused has created? How would you look at it at this point right now in terms of what we've achieved?
So,
giving them also control over the Strait of Hormuz, like we may have given them more power in many ways.
Right. I mean, people like to think of wars as binaries, right? One side won, one side lost. World War I is a great example of the British won World War I, but it lost them their empire, right? So on one way of looking at it, Britain lost World War I. Iran is certainly a loser in this war to a great degree, because it's obviously been devastated and a lot of their infrastructure has been destroyed. A lot of their investments in their military have been destroyed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that we can't lose too. And what you've just described is us also losing, where Iran is not totally wiped out. I mean, the strategic goal of wiping Iran out as an opponent, period, is an absurdity right off the bat, right? That was the strategic goal. And that's, unless you're willing to commit mass murder through nuclear weapons, that's never happening. So that was never on the table. That was never a real thing that was going to happen. But the U.S. and Israel took a shot at it happening. So we've already lost. We wanted regime change and end of the nuclear program. Both Israel and the United States have both admitted that is no longer on the table. So if you look at what Israel and the U.S. thought they were gaining by doing this, we've already lost that war. The secondary objective was, oh shit, well, we damaged them a lot. But we don't control the Strait of Hormuz anymore. They do, or they at least have the ability to coerce it very intensely. And Rubio said the other day, like, well, we're hoping the Europeans come in. Like, we're now back on a secondary objective for something that was not a problem for us before we started the war.
Right.
The strait was open. The Iranians had no power to control it before the war because they had things that we deterred them by threatening things they didn't want to lose. Well, they've lost all those things. They've got nothing to lose now. And they have every reason now that they have in many ways lost gigantically. They have every reason in the world to make sure we do too. And so far, I've not seen anybody come up with a reasonable way to turn this around, to change it. I don't know. No one has said, oh, we've got a drone system that'll shoot down all their drones attacking these tankers. No one said we've got a mine cleaning clearing system that will do this. Nobody has this. And we have created a monster for ourselves.
Talk more about what it would mean to deploy ground troops. It's impossible to forecast what would happen to them. But I guess one question I have is, how can they
Not possible. It's actually easy to.
Okay.
It's actually very easy to see what would happen to them because the Iranians have artillery in range, tube artillery, regular old artillery in range of that island. They've got a ton of troops on the island itself. So there'd be a very stiff stand-up fight to wipe the Iranians off of that island. The Iranians would have every reason, by the way, to just blow up that refining capacity there. Right? Why not? You're going to lose it anyway, so fuck it. Don't be tempted by it being held hostage, so just destroy it on the way out. If I think there are 20,000 Iranian troops on that island, something like that, we may not be able to knock them off that island. I suspect we would. But then for the Iranians, you've got American troops in a difficult to secure place close to their coast. And all you do is send drones over every single day until the U.S. runs out of interceptors.
Right.
And until you're hunting troops down in their bunkers on the island. And by the way, you are also trying to hit helicopters coming in to bring supplies. You're firing, you're putting out mines all around the island. You're doing anything you can to just make it harder. And I mean, what you would see eventually is something similar to what we're seeing in Ukraine, where American troops are dealing with an intense drone environment that they are not trained for, by the way. The U.S. military is not ready for this. So, I've been calling it Dien Bien Phu with nicer beaches, right? Like that's the.
How many people died there?
Classic thing. What's that?
How many died there?
That's a good question. I don't know, but I've seen it, and and if folks don't know, Dien Bien Phu was the French plan to draw in all of the North Vietnamese to destroy them in, I believe, 1954. And they went to this valley in North Vietnam with their paratroopers and everybody else and dropped them in. And it never occurred to them the Vietnamese might be able to bring greater combat power that far out into the sticks, which is exactly what happened. And the French threw, it was kind of a final throw of the dice to win in North Vietnam. And they got defeated and overrun in Dien Bien Phu, and it completely destroyed their position in Southeast Asia. This feels
over 2,000 French were killed, 6,000 were wounded, 3,700 were missing in that, you were right, 1954 military invasion.
So just a complete disaster for the French, and I think the U.S. would be making a similar mistake if it tried to do what they did in Kharg Island.
So when we look at what's happened so far, 13 U.S. troops killed, over 300 injured, prices soaring across the world, stock market crashing, Iran effectively blocking the Strait of Hormuz except for the people that they can negotiate with, and arguably $33 billion already spent on the eve of 1 month. It'll be 1 month since the war began. This is unsustainable for any number of reasons. Do you think there's any way that Congress, including Republicans, could stand in the way? And by the way, if like a lot of Americans die, don't you think it's possible that could be a wrap for Trump and he could be impeached?
Yes. Well, impeached, no, because I think that Republicans in the Senate are too chicken shit.
I think so too, but
let's just say this: if by some crazy thing he got impeached, this is certainly how you'd go about it. Like this is an unbelievably stupid thing for them to do. As I told somebody, they're calling Hegseth, they're calling him stupid
McNamara,
right now, and what this is basically speed running Vietnam. That's what's happening right now. So.
What does that mean? Speed running Vietnam?
Like they're doing all the crazy things that we did in Vietnam, but instead of doing it and getting slowly pulled in over the course of years, they're getting pulled in the course of like a month.
All right. Well, the other thing I just wanted to ask you, not connected to Iran. The government shut down at the beginning of the year for a few days. Negotiations open it back up. Funding every part of the government but the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats using this as leverage to get some control and some reforms over ICE. Some really important ones. And so if you followed this, you know that The lines at TSA have been crazy in certain airports across the country, which is another real cost. And if you haven't waited in that line, you are considering or reconsidering buying a ticket, going anywhere using an airport. And now the negotiations are coming to, we thought, some fruition, and it looked like Democrats were going to win. Senate Republicans voted for it to open. They voted to open it in the Senate, and then apparently it went back to the House, and House Republicans did not like what the Senate did. And the current status is that TSA is still unfunded, right? And so politically, what was the strategy? Who's winning? And how do you see this playing out? Because this is another real cost and effect to the public.
So what's happening right now is that the Democrats are winning, like flat out they're winning, because the Senate and Trump have already basically said, Uncle, we'll do this, and we'll fund everything except for ICE. And the House Republicans would love to do the same thing, except that they've got 10 crazies who will fight it to the T. And, Mike Johnson's job depends on those people. So Republicans now fully get the blame. A much maligned Chuck Schumer has once again outmaneuvered the Republicans in the Senate and in the White House and won't get any credit for it. But the average person knows. They know this was the Republicans screwing this up. And if you're going into the holiday summer season and it's incredibly shitty to get onto a plane and everything's slowed down and you've got these ICE thugs, giving you fake smiles as you're taking your shoes off, every normal person knows whose fault it is. And that's politics. Politics is hooking your opponent with the blame for something like this. And I think Democrats have done an excellent job of it. And it eventually, I would suspect, will get solved pretty soon after Democrats and Republicans come back after this current recess. And I think that House Republicans are just going to have to knuckle under and do it. And that'll be good for Democrats in every possible way. The Republicans will pay for it politically, but Democrats will get credit for having fixed it or resolved it.
Just want to ask you one question about the split in the MAGA movement. You've got a whole bunch of commentators that have peeled off or are fighting with each other, like Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson against Mark Levin, Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, and so many others have turned against, in many ways, Trump for Epstein and especially for this horrible, horrible war that he started and stepping on his own dick. Not to mention, even before that, tariffs and plenty of other things. What do you make of CPAC empty and pathetic this year? This is the kind of consistent question. What is happening to the MAGA movement really does seem to be losing a tremendous amount of steam. Democrats are winning literally every special election everywhere. So what are your thoughts? And is it even a good question at this point to talk about what's happening?
Yeah. So this is what I would say, Pete, that the MAGA movement, it's important that the MAGA movement is clearly disorganized, demoralized, weakened, etc. But what's more important is that the low information voters, like you look at the Rogans of this world, right? And is it not Alfred Schultz? Who's that Schultz comedian with got a similar name to
that's Alfred's actual cousin, Andrew.
Okay, Andrew Schultz. That's it.
Yeah.
You listen to these guys, you hear about these guys, and these guys were all sort of like soft Trump voters in the last election. Mm-hmm. And now they're like, fuck this guy. He's lying to us and lied us into a war. He lied to us about Epstein. He lied to us about this, lied to us about that. Trump's superpower was that he was the anti-politician politician. Now he is just another fucking politician, and these guys hate him for it. And, his approval rating amongst independents is 25%. His approval rating amongst Latinos is negative 44%. Like, Trump's approval and Republicans' approval is cratering. And I was talking to a buddy earlier tonight who is a professional pollster, and he sent me a couple of graphs that I'll put on my Blue Sky thing tonight, where his comment was the bottom is falling out. And I think that's what's happening. I think that less about MAGA falling apart then that MAGA's broader appeal is falling apart. And I think it's happening like really catastrophically as we speak.
Also, just worth mentioning, fifth straight week in a row, S&P 500 has dropped. We talk about gas prices a lot, as we should, the cost of food, the things that everybody pays for. Not nearly the high percentage of Americans are not necessarily invested, although their retirement funds probably are in the stock market, and they're probably watching them. So it's hard to say, but I think most people are seeing their retirement funds, their 401ks, pensions if they got them, going down. That's got to matter a lot too, and it's seemingly the only metric that the commander-in-chief does seem to watch.
Yes and no. He's been making what I would see as less and less sincere and less effectual and less, what would be the term? Less enthusiastic attempts to work the market. It's like he's kind of, he's a song and dance man. He's a con artist who's kind of tired of his own con.
Right.
And I think that it's having less, the markets are just sort of starting they're reacting less to him, and they're not taken in as much. And I think that as this year goes on, it's really that's going to collapse. In fact, I think that we're coming close to the point where every time he speaks, he hurts the market.
Yeah.
Because no one trusts him. Nobody believes him. Everybody looks at what's going on and says, this is a fucking disaster. And, going back to Iran, Iran is not just a foreign policy disaster. It's a medical price disaster and availability disaster, because many drugs that are made in India, generics, are dependent upon petroleum products from the Persian Gulf. It's also a summer tourism disaster, because gas prices will go up and people will not want to take trips. It's also a food price disaster, because diesel's going up faster than anything else, and it's going to cause trucking to be more expensive. It's also it's a shipbuilding disaster, because 30% of the helium that is used to build microchips comes from the Persian Gulf, and chip prices are also high. So this is not just a foreign policy disaster. This is a foreign policy disaster that will affect everybody in America negatively on a whole rainbow of ways. And I think that is the makings of a real political collapse for the MAGA movement, for Trump, for the GOP.
All right, Bill Boyle, I appreciate you staying up late with me on a Sunday night to go over all of it. So thoughtful and informative as always. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Sorry about the camera issue, but I think I'm more handsome this way anyway. Bill's
camera went off, and it was an unbelievable relief. That's right.
Right? Yeah. You
wait.
Better. I did too.
Speaking of that, Mr. Potato Head, and I meant that because you're Catholic and Irish. I've been hearing, and I saw in your Blue Sky something what are Catholic leaders, the Pope and others, have laid out some pretty serious reprimands for. Do you have anything at the tip of your I'm gonna go look it up now, but what did the Pope say?
The Catholic hierarchy is clearly not having their bullshit.
Here it is. Pope Leo, Reuters. Pope Leo says God rejects prayers of leaders who wage wars. What?
That's also true. That's doctrine. That's Catholic doctrine. What this Pope is doing is counteracting the advanced bullshit version of Catholicism, where these guys become Catholics because they think that makes them sound like intellectual MAGA people. And the Catholic Church has clearly had enough of that shit.
Pope Leo condemned Donald Trump's military operation in Iran and warned that God does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war. The Chicago-born pontiff advocated for peace in his Palm Sunday address to worshipers. As Easter approaches, he reminded people that Jesus Christ spurns the prayers of those whose hands are full of blood, citing the prophet Isaiah. Jesus is the King of peace who rejects war, whom no one can use to justify war, the Pope said. He does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them. The pontiff expressed concern for a crucified humanity, adding the church can hear the painful groans of all those who are oppressed by violence and victims of war. He asked warmongers to have mercy for the people impacted by the conflict. A warning to Trump in a blistering address over the weekend. That's your guy.
Yeah, I mean, you know what that is? That is completely Orthodox Catholicism.
Right.
Like, that's the thing that, like, when people talk about that, they're like, whoa, I can't believe the Pope is saying this. It's like, no, the Pope is saying exactly what the church has written on the cover of it, right? Like the church that I grew up in, by the way, had a big thing on the wall that said, it had Christ with his hand up, and it said, the Prince of Peace, right? Like, this is what the Catholic Church is supposed to be about. And I will tell you, I do think this is another one of those pretty important things, because the Latino vote, particularly with stuff like this, is being reminded.
Right? Yeah, good points. I'm glad I asked you about that, you Catholic you. I appreciate it very, very much, sir. I'll let you go. And thanks, everybody, stop by to watch live. Go follow Bill on Blue Sky right now at Bill B in D.C. and go see him. Have a beer with him if you're in Washington, D.C., like my friend Ryan is about to.
Thanks, folks.
Later, bud. There he goes, Bill B in D.C., everybody. Always love when he joins me. I just noticed there's a weird pinging sound. Did you hear that? I could never quite get his audio right. And I say I can't. It's not his job. He's not a professional broadcaster. One of the things we love about him. But I'm going to go to his house, set him up, and make sure he's all set for the best possible audio and video. Because we also lost his video there. Again, he's not a pro broadcaster, but he is an excellent communicator and a brilliant guy. I always love talking to him. Go follow him on Blue Sky at Bill B in D.C. right now. And that's what I've got for you today. I should be live with Eric Siegel at 11 a.m. today. Hope to see you there, you bumblebees. Really appreciate you. Go subscribe on Substack and YouTube, and go write a rating or review of this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you've not done that, that's a huge thing. Go give it 5 stars. If you've not done that, please do it. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. Thank you to John Carroll for writing and performing all the music. JohnCarroll.org. Talk to you tomorrow. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Stand up, you gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans for the stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. come on,